right, welcome everyone to another episode of Helping the Brave Live. And today I've got a really excited, again, I'm Mohawk Matt Denny. I'm part of the Helping the Brave co-host cadre. My other co-hosts couldn't make it, something came up, but that's where there's many of us. We share the load and share the love and keep sharing the stories and the goodness. And today we're going to share a very unique story of a non-veteran, but has really focused his life the last many years on helping veterans and helping share the story that doesn't often get shared. And he's going to tell you more about that. I'm pleased to introduce you to the one and only Douglas Taurel. How's it going, Doug?
Hey, man. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, we're excited. We're excited to have you on and share your story. So we're going to dive right into it. Tell us 60 seconds of who Doug is before you get into the play and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Well, excuse me. So I'm originally from Texas. I live in Hoboken, New Jersey, which is right across the Hudson River, right across from Manhattan. They call Hoboken the sixth borough of New York. I've been here 21 years, a professional actor in the city, doing the acting thing, TV, film, theater. Got 2 kids, a very high maintenance dog, which is a Vizsla. I don't know if you know what a Vizsla is. Really high maintenance hunting dog. I do not recommend getting it in an urban city. I think I made that mistake, but really sweet dog, really fun dog. And that's it, trying to do my thing and get through the insanity that we're all living through right now.
That's what we're all feeling, and definitely love that and love your story. And I want to get right into it. Tell us how. So I'm going to tell everyone, Doug here is writer and producer for something called American Soldier Live. And 5 days ago, did not know what that was, but ever since having to write this up and create this episode, I was like, man, this is exciting. I'm freaking pumped to hear about this, and I can't wait to see it one day too. So Doug, take us down that journey.
So it's called the American Soldier Solo Show. It's really called the American Soldier, but I couldn't get that as a website, so the website is called the American Soldier Solo Show. So it's a play that I wrote. I started creating it I've been creating it for so long that I kind of lose track when I first started, but I've been performing it professionally since 2014. It's based off of letters from veterans from the Revolution, from American Revolution all the way through the current wars of Iraq and Afghanistan. And what it tries to do is give audiences a sincere appreciation and understanding of what sacrifice really is, to really define sacrifice and to show what sacrifice means for some families, whether that be losing a father, a son, a daughter, PTSD, losing a limb in combat. And, I started creating the play probably around 2008 or 9. Again, I'm a little fuzzy when I started creating it, but it came out of an idea of when we were heavily in the Middle East, me reading about a lot of vets who were struggling with PTSD and coming back home and weren't able to pay their bills and were having a hard time getting their life together. And I just thought that not enough people were paying attention to that part of the story. So I thought I would create a little play. Originally it was going to be a play, and I couldn't find a director to help me turn it into a play. And I finally worked with someone. He's a very established playwright. His name is Craig Lucas. He wrote the film. He's a prolific playwright, but people may know him from Prelude to a Kiss. That was a movie done with Alec Baldwin. He wrote that. And he said, Doug, I think what you have I don't think you have a play. I think what you have is a one-man show. And so that got me on the journey to kind of put it together as a one-man show. And it became kind of like this, this goal to get it up, and give vets a voice. And I struggled with it. I had a lot of ups and downs with it, and I couldn't figure it out. And I finally, through hook and crook, I found a director, and I was able to put together 20 minutes of what is a nucleus of what I have today. The play has changed a lot. And when I first performed it, I found a festival. I couldn't even get into a festival. No one wanted to hear that kind of stuff back then, especially around 2013 or 2014. We were getting really fatigue was the word I can use. We were getting fatigued with
Yeah.
what was going on in the Middle East. And I live in New York. You know, it's a fairly jaded town, and people were just they were hitting their saturation point. And so couldn't get in any festivals. And the one festival that I was hoping to get into was called the New York Fringe Festival, but it had gone under. It had closed. It was a big theater festival. And so I was like, oh, I guess that's it. So, but I eventually found a festival on the Lower East Side called the Bowery Poetry Club. And it was a festival called Mano a Mano Festival. And somebody had dropped out, and I had submitted the idea of what I was doing. And she said, you know, if you're off book, which means do you know your lines, I'd like to sub you in for one night for Memorial Weekend. And I think it was the weekend of because Memorial's on Monday. I think it was the Saturday. I think it was Sunday. It was the Sunday. And it was a rainy Sunday night. And I remember I didn't want to do it. You know, I always tell the story. I always share with people that if you're an actor and you don't want to perform, that means you know that no one else wants to come see a play. You know, Sunday was rainy and I was tired and I didn't think what I had was any good. You know, I've been working on it for so long. Because at that point, I had been working on it for, I guess, almost 7 or 8 years already. And so I just thought it was going to be a big dud, and I was, you know, didn't think it was going to be any good. And so I got up in 2014. I performed this play towards the end, and it went really good. And I got a standing ovation. And the standing ovation wasn't what was really interesting about that night, but for the first time, I felt that the play had a voice. I could hear the play say something, and so it was the sister of a fallen soldier who fought in Afghanistan came up to me. She was very emotional, and she said, you know, she shared her story with me, and she said, "I hope you don't stop. I hope you keep going because I think what you have is very important." And that is what started the journey where I'm at now. Fast forward since that night, and I've performed. The play's changed. It's gotten a lot bigger, a lot longer. And since that night, I've probably performed to close, I don't know, I'm going to guess 15 to 20,000 vets. It's performed in 28 cities. It's been at the Kennedy Center twice, Library of Congress a couple times, off Broadway a couple times, and it keeps going. And during COVID, before COVID hit, I had 7 shows booked for that year. Obviously, COVID knocked all of them but 2 out. I was still able to get 2 in. And this year, it's starting to pick up again, and I'm heading to, as of now, I've got Texas and Iowa, and looks like Arizona and California may come on the books as well for this year. So that's it in a Reader Digest version.
Oh, I think that's fantastic. I love hearing the story of how things are created, but also just how this kind of came into play and not play on words, came into fruition, and just kind of you went through it in that journey of, hey, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? Because that's a lot of what veterans feel. That's a lot of what it's like to get out when you transition. You may start something, and even when you join the military, you get thrown into something you don't know really what you're signing up for. And I mean, you don't have much control once you sign that dotted line, but similar to your story of that, hey, let's see what happens and where this goes. And you either stick with it or you don't, and you transition out. In your case, you stuck with it. We do have someone here. Patricia's looking forward to the solo show in California. So once you get out there, that's awesome. Do you know Patricia?
Yes, I do know Patricia.
From your audience, there you go.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's in many ways, the play has a very similar arc as what many vets have experienced, either in combat or after combat, that when you think all is done, there's always a way to keep pushing and finding a way to get over the top. And that was definitely true with the play. There was many times. I mean, there was a point when I actually threw the whole script in the trash can because I was so frustrated.
Wow.
because I couldn't find a director. No one knew. All I had was a bunch of letters from veterans. And, if you're a vet, you pretty much know. I mean, vets don't really write. I mean, it's kind of like combat. It's a little excitement and a lot of boring stuff. And when they write letters, they're usually writing really a lot of boring stuff. They're writing stuff like, today, we had MREs. I'm getting tired of MREs. Haven't slept really well. You have to sift through a lot of crap basically to kind of find the really powerful stuff. And then when you go back to the Civil War and the Revolution, when you're reading stuff, especially the Revolution, a lot of the guys were basically illiterate, and so they wrote really boring stuff. Like today we hunt monkfish, tomorrow we go hunt monkfish, monkfish. And so you have to keep, you have to dig through. And so it's really frustrating. So then when you collect all these letters from all these different eras, and then you go to a director and you say, look, I want to turn this into something. And they're like, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. That's why I'm hoping you figure it out. But it's kind of like, Jordan Peterson always has a great analogy. It's kind of like by finding a goal, and work and just going at it and working on it, it eventually starts working on you. And though if you're a shot, if you're shooting something and it's your way off, the more you keep working on it, the more narrow that aim gets, and eventually it gets sharper and sharper and sharper. Eventually you start hitting the bullseye, right? But that process of going from missing left, missing right, down and up to eventually getting the bullseye is very frustrating, because you don't know. It feels like you're whistling in the dark. You don't know when you're going to get from A to Z, and you just have to have faith in it and just keep plugging away. And in many ways, those are the stories that I tell in my play, which is ironic that it's kind of the same journey that I went through in creating the play. But that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And I think that's what makes it even more powerful, is in your own way, you've had to go through different, but the similar process of start, stop, don't do, of what a lot of veterans go through both in combat, after combat, and things like that. Just a couple shout outs real quick. Ed Parco, our other host, said thanks for having on the show today. He had things come up because that's life. So that's why we have multiple hosts. And Pat C from YouTube, I think they're trying to do an emoji and maybe just translate it to that. But thanks, Pat. And Francis he says, everybody has self-doubt. When you lose that is when you should start to worry. And,
true.
Very, very true.
Yep.
Sorry, it looked like you had something to say.
No, sorry. I thought I was going to wait for you to ask. I mean, the thing is, the play's been really interesting because I've been doing it for so many years now that I've become friends with a lot of vets from many different branches, different eras, different religion, different ilks, races, all of them. And it's just been, in many ways, it's been kind of like a focus group doing the play, because after the play, you always have a Q&A, and you get an opportunity to hear other stories and other vets share their stories. And it's been really humbling for one, and it's been really powerful to hear their stories. I interviewed Brian Eish. He has a documentary called Father, Son, Soldier. It was an award-winning documentary. It's on Netflix. And I've become acquaintance of him, and we got to interview him for about an hour and a half, and we talked about different things. And one of the things that he shared, that a lot of other vets have shared with me over the years, is that the number one problem and the number one thing that vets can all do to help themselves is talking, right? Talking is the best thing you can do. Find a group, find a band of brothers, so to say, band of sisters, and find some and share your story. And then the other two things is, find a purpose and do something you love. I think, a lot of times from the vets that I've talked to, when you're in the military, you're told when to eat, when to get dressed, and you do that for, I don't know, X amount of years. And then all that structure is kind of just evaporated, taken away from you. It can be really challenging, because now what you thought you had purpose and what was your identity now is gone. It's not there anymore. And so now you have to redefine yourself. And, it could be as easy as, fishing. I think the first step is to always find to do something that you absolutely love. And it can be fishing, hunting, writing, drawing, whatever it is. But that slowly will start giving you, it will start igniting your passion. And then that will start giving you purpose. And then you'll start finding your identity. And those three things will really help you get grounded. And, that's true for a combat vet who's dealing with serious PTS, or just somebody who is lost. But, I think a lot of times we don't put enough emphasis on doing something you love. And you get into a job of 9 to 5, and you never, I especially as an actor, whenever you tell someone, they say, "What do you do?" As I'm an actor, you always hear someone say, "Oh, I always wanted to be an actor. I was really artistic," or something, right? And the first thought to my head is, well, act. Memorize a monologue and put it on YouTube, or because if you don't do something you love, what happens is I think you create a spiritual suicide, and that's when the demons start coming out, right? Because everything's kind of dying inside of you, if that makes sense. And so by finding that purpose, finding something you love, helping you find your identity, and finding band of brothers, band of sisters, a group that you can talk to, really helps. It's really the answer to any problem in life, really, but it's definitely a key factor for vets coming back and transitioning out of the military.
Definitely want it. And I really appreciate that you talked about it a few minutes ago, and you brought it full circle just now, because sometimes that can be the best thing. That can also be the hardest thing to do when you're not still fresh. You haven't found what that meant to you, or those incidents meant for you and to you. Then there was a point in my life where there's no way I would have talked about anything that I went through in the Marine Corps related to certain situations. And now I can, because I've talked in different ways. It didn't start with talking, though. It started with the ukulele. It started with the music therapy class.
There you go.
I didn't know how to play an instrument. I'm like, well, ukulele's not too hard. So, and then that got me to where I needed to, where I felt comfortable talking.
It goes to like that whole shooting the bullseye, right?
Yep.
You're missing left, missing right, but you keep shooting, and eventually it gets sharp. The scope on the rifle or whatever you're shooting at, no pun intended, but the scope gets sharper, and it gets focused, and you start drilling it.
Yeah, that's definitely. So, how long is the show?
So the play is about 85 minutes right now, 85, almost 90 minutes. I play 14 characters, men, women, and children. All the vets that I play are all infantrymen, except one. He's Sullivan Ballou from the Civil War. It's a very famous letter. Dear Sarah. It was read. It was done in the Ken Burns documentary, and it was also read when President Trump was inaugurated. But he's the only one who was he was a lieutenant. But everyone's an infantry, and then I play, like I said, women and children, and I try to play different ethnicities. I play Hispanic, which is easier for me because my parents are immigrants. My parents are Hispanic. I try to portray an African American character. I play Southern characters. I play a guy from Boston. Play a guy from Brooklyn. So what I try to do in the play in the 90 minutes that I perform is to kind of give a mosaic of what the American soldier is. That it's all these ethnicities and all these races that have come together to form what we know as the American soldier. And when you study American history, it's very what's the word? I don't want to say complex, but it's really deep. It's really profound. It's all the different generations, the different ethnicities that have committed to the military and who have defended what the United States is. It's very profound. It's very deep. So to kind of give a picture of that, and I think what's been why the play has been really successful is that though I talk about war, I also talk about three pillars in the military, three beautiful things in the military. And one of the things is there's one character that comes out three times. And when he first comes out, he talks about discipline. when he joins the boot camp. Second comes out in the middle of the play and talks about teamwork. And then at the end of the play, he closes it out with brotherhood. And so the three pillars talk about, what is beautiful about the military. And in between the three pillars, we talk about, I portray sacrifice, whether that be losing a limb, losing a father, losing a son, and all the different effects that PTS and going to war can have on a family and on a soldier. But I think a lot of what a lot of audiences have also told me who are not connected to the military is that they see the American story in front of them, right? Because they're reminded of what is beautiful about the country. Something that, at least in my generation, it was, we all, that's how we learn American history. We learned it as great, as beautiful as the shining star on top of the hill, right? Which is a 180 where we're at today in our nation. So I think a lot of older generations, when they see that, they really appreciate that. They appreciate, especially when they hear the music, they appreciate, if you're in your 70s, and 80s, you probably still remember a connection to the Second World War. And if you're in your, 70s or, late 60s and 70s, when I did the Vietnam pieces, you remember your youth and where you were at when you served or where the country was in Vietnam. So I think that's what's given the play success. And then afterwards, we always have a Q&A, and the Q&A started organically, and that goes on for about 30, 45 minutes. And they're really emotional because a lot of the vets stand up for the very first time and they start sharing their story. And some of them have never, ever shared their story. And the play is able to open them up, get them to share a very personal story that they've been holding for, in some cases, 30, 40 years. I think I lost you.
I put myself on mute.
Oh, there you go.
That power of sharing that story, we've seen it here on the show. That sometimes that first time is just, it can be hard, but that it's like a release.
Yeah.
That release of just being able to share. So do you have a podcast that you do as well to encompass with all of this, or you just hear people's stories and just take them in?
No, I mean, I have a podcast. It's called the Actors Podcast, but it's not it's really my hobby thing. I share all kinds of different stuff on it. I have a couple of vet interviews on it, but I share a lot of acting stuff on it. I haven't been very organized with my podcast. The play and the TV series have been full-time jobs basically. So they've kind of taken over my life. But the stories come from research from the library, if that's what you're getting at. I mean, that's just their actual letters. Some of them are stories that I've heard, that I've pulled off a podcast, but everybody's always said that I should start a podcast, but I just haven't. I've got so many irons in the fire that I just haven't been able to get to it, and you know how much work a podcast is. So yeah. It's not just, recording someone.
Well, whenever you run across people in your journeys that you feel are a good story to share, send them to us. We're happy to have them on and help people share that story.
Yeah, well, there was a guy that I was on a podcast yesterday, a really fascinating gentleman. His name is Greg Washington, and West Point graduate, played West Point football. I always watched the West Point game. Was captain on the football team, served in Afghanistan heroically. He played in the East Shrine game. Really, just a really fascinating guy, And I spoke to him yesterday, and he's actually doing, and I'll connect you with him. He's actually doing, I think next week or something, he's doing something like a Forrest Gump walk. I mean, he's walking, all to raise awareness for veterans who, the suicide, and which is really hard now because of COVID. In COVID, it's gotten worse because the economic shutdown has been really tough. So I raised, it's not much, but I was able to raise $3,000, and I donated every single penny to the food shelter at Fort Bragg's in Fayetteville. And yeah, so the play is really, it's introduced me to some amazing human beings. Again, Purple Hearts, Silver Stars, Vietnam veterans, nurses, therapists. I mean, on my website, there's a link for social media and veteran testimonials, and it just goes on forever. It's just it's been. I mean, I can share a funny story. So,
yeah,
when I was in high school, I grew up in Texas, so I played, high school Texas high school football. So when you play Texas high school football, you're pretty much on the #1 recruiting list for every recruiter, right? I mean, you're going to get a call from a recruiter, and sure enough, it was like can't remember when, but it was during my senior year. I was pretty much, football was over with, and I started getting a call. My first call was from the Army. He was trying to recruit me, and so I told him that I was blind in my left eye. And after his spiel, he said, well, I think you're going to have a good life, son. I don't think the military is going to be for you, but thank you for taking the call. And I said, not a problem. Then the Marine, a couple of weeks later, a Marine called, shared the same story. And he's like, I think, Doug, you're going to have a good life. I don't think the military is for you. Thank you for taking the call. Then the Navy called, U.S. Coast Guard called. And I think when the U.S. Coast Guard called, I think I even told them before they even started. I said, look, before you even, get on your spiel, let me just start this. So I got off the phone, and I literally thought that was the end of my military connection. Like I thought that was as close as I'll ever get to the military, right? I'm never going to be able to serve. I'm not going to have any connection to it. So it's really funny now, where I am at with the play, that I am just marinated with veterans, and I know so much about the military, and I'm connected with so many, special forces branches, from so many all over the country. And I find it really just funny. I just find it funny, that I know that when you tie your boots, you got to tuck your shoelaces in, and I know that how to fold a blanket, and I know what polish to use on the boots, and always step left foot, and all the little intricacies that you would never think you would know, that I've become like an expert on, and how to turn, and so it's been cool. It's been fun, how to hold a 50 caliber machine gun, how to hold a 50 cal. I mean, when I performed in the Kennedy Center, I was holding it with like wide hands, and this girl came up, and this woman, she was a vet, and she said, beautiful, blah, blah, blah. I love what you did. It was written. She goes, I just want to give you one note. If I can give you one note. I go, yeah, please. When you hold a 50 cal, it's here. It's not here. And so she, she was giving me notes, and so in many ways, the play, and after every show, some vet just gives me a note, when your blanket should be turned this way or whatever. So now the play has gotten so, tight with the military and how it communicates that a lot of people, when in the Q&As, they can't believe that I'm not a vet. They're like, how do you know all that stuff? And it's just been, one, it's based on vet letters, but the other thing is just that it's, vets themselves have filtered it. They've been polishing it for me, but, by just being part of it and somehow.
That's incredible. And I love it. Just ties back to not only life, but veteran life, of just making those tweaks, making those adjustments, just like you spoke to earlier, and starting out here and working towards that bullseye.
Yeah.
Of just keep working at it, keep going, keep doing it so much that no one would ever know that you weren't in the military.
Yeah.
And I love the little shoelaces and the bed turned the right way and holding the 50 cal, because those, while not the target of your play, those are also stories that you don't really talk about.
No. I
mean, you don't really I don't know if I've ever talked to anyone that wasn't a vet about how we tie our shoes and put them underneath our pants. Like, that's just something you don't, that's just,
yeah.
It's so routine. It's so light. Like, what do you mean you don't know how to do that? That's easy.
Yeah. No, it's like, and these little things, I mean, you learn about the military. The military, they condition you to do the little things. So when they ask you to do the big thing, you're not thinking about the little things. Those are taken care of, right? I've become in awe of the military in many ways, because I think what I think there is beauty in serving, and I think there's beauty in serving your country. And I think the skills that it does give you, and what I've learned from afar, are like discipline, for example. Discipline is something that it's hard to teach. Many don't have it, and vets who can hold on to it when they leave the military can really they can prosper in life. And I think it's a beautiful thing that I think just one of the beautiful attributes in serving in the military.
That's fantastic. So you talked a little bit about we've talked a lot about the play American Soldier, the solo show. What about American Soldier's Journey Home?
So that I wrote that play. So the American Soldier Journey Home is based off. So in 2018 was the 100-year anniversary of armistice. And those who don't know what armistice is, that's basically Veterans Day. That was the ending of World War I. Armistice was signed on November 11th at 11 o'clock on the 11th. So that's when armistice is, and that's why we celebrate Veterans Day on November 11th. So in 2018, or 2017, the Library of Congress, they wanted to honor the 100-year anniversary of armistice. So they asked me to write a play, and at first I said no. I said, I didn't want to go through the whole journey of the American soldier again. I was like, that was a tough thing to do. But my wife said, if the Library of Congress asks you to write a play, you say yes. So I called them up and I said, yeah, I'll do it. So they gave me a bunch of diaries to read, and I picked one diary, and I've become friends of the family. His name is Irving Greenwald. He was a Hungarian Jew who fought in the First World War, and I wrote a play based on his diary. He kept a very there's a couple diaries. So my revolution piece in the American Soldier, most of the material is based off of Joseph Plum and Ebenezer Fox, and they were Minutemen who they were educated, and they kept really accurate and historic diaries. And every conflict that we go through, there's always a group of veterans or group of soldiers who do that, who keep really detailed diaries. And Irving Greenwald was one of them. He really poetic. I mean, really poetic stuff. He was Jewish. He was a runner in the First World War. So I don't know if anybody who doesn't know what a runner is. Actually, a runner is more dangerous than actually fighting, because basically what happened is, during the war, both sides, they would blow up radio lines. And so you would either have to send runners to go communicate between different parts of the battlefield and sometimes within a battlefield, or pigeons. But pigeons weren't always great, because pigeons would get shot down by snipers. So you would use humans as your messenger, as your carriers. And so he was a runner, and he saw horrific death, horrible death. And that was that play. It was his journey of why he served and how he became a soldier, and how him serving. And he fought. He was part of the Lost Battalion. If anybody doesn't know what the Lost Battalion is, the Lost Battalion was a battalion that was lost between the Argonne River and between the Argonne Forest, right next to the Meuse River. And it was a battalion that they were going forward with the French to fight the German, and the French retreated without telling them. And so we lost all communication with this one battalion. And so they were in the middle of American artillery and German artillery. And no one knew where they were at, and they were just getting hammered by both sides. They were trapped. I think to this day, they suffer more casualties than, I think it's to this day, that battalion suffered more casualties than any battalion in American history. They made a movie about it. Ricky Schroeder did it. It's called The Lost Battalion. And he was part of this Lost Battalion. And if you're a history buff, it's great stuff to study. It's amazing. And what was really cool is that, again, these projects have allowed me to connect with so many different families of veterans and just different people who are connected to the military. But when he was getting sent away over to Europe, his wife was pregnant, and his goal, his dream, he would pray. He was very religious, and in a good way, though. I mean, he was just always praying to God, and he was always asking God to please grant him one wish. He just wanted to see his baby before he died. That was his only wish. Her name was Cecily, and so I'm reading this in the diary, and I got to know this guy's life from the ins and outs. I started looking up where he lived. He lived on 22 East 70th Street, which it's not far from here. I went there to look at it, try to feel where it was. And so anyway, he makes it back. He gets to see, his daughter. He dies. He actually dies young in his life. He dies in his 40s. He dies from he took shrapnel to a leg. He got hit by an artillery. He was near an artillery explosion, and so he comes back. He dies in the 40s. Just to go again to American Sacrifice, his son served in the Second World War and died in D-Day. But I got to meet, when I performed at the Library of Congress, when I performed that play, I got to meet Cecily before she passed away. Wow. She was 98 years old.
Wow.
And she came in a wheelchair, and she saw the play, and it was thrilling because I had to connect. There's a picture. If you go to my website, there's a picture under projects, the World War I play. You'll see me next to her, holding her and hugging her. And it's, it was surreal, man. It was surreal. I mean, I got to meet, somebody who I've been reading about before she was even born. Now I got to meet her at 98 years old. It was a very humbling experience to meet her and meet her family. And I've got a picture, and I met her grandkids, and I met the great grandkids. And so that's that play, and that's that project.
That's really cool. You just, your whole life has become around veterans.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It's weird. It's like when I thought I would never be a vet, never serve, at least.
Well, I'm sure you get it all the time, but I'm going to add on to it. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for sharing the story of those who haven't had their story shared.
Well, I think stories are important. I mean, I think stories are important. I mean, stories, they're tribal to us in humans. We've been sitting around a campfire and listening to stories since the beginning of time. And I've always been a storyteller. And so I think the acting, though I didn't study it when I was in high school, I got into it late in college. It was a natural fit for me, the glove fit, because I love telling stories. But I think these stories are really important because I think what's been really interesting for me performing, especially when I perform and younger audiences get to see the play. I mean, a lot of them don't know the American story. They don't know American history. They don't know where we come from. They don't know when World War II was. They don't know when the Vietnam War was, who we fought in World War I, the difference between the Revolution and the Civil War. So that has been something that has been really interesting. I've been trying to, share to younger audiences. I've made a concerted effort to teach my children the history of the American history. They know very clearly when the Second World War was. They know very clearly what the First World War was. They know Vietnam. Me and my son we're studying the Civil War together, and I'm teaching him the complexities of the Civil War and how it's not black and white. It's very gray. It was a very gray war, and how it, conflicts are always gray. So I try to teach my son, but going back to hearing these stories, I think hearing the American stories, I think if more of us understood what our stories were, then I think we would have more of a connection to each other. And I think what's happened, and this has been a big deal for vets. I performed from the American Legion, and the Legion and the VFWs, they're dying out. They're not, and these used to be kind of places where vets can go and tell their stories to each other and hold each other. But now vets don't do that, and now we've become more isolated through communication. Communication has been great. I'm talking to you, and you're in Utah, in DC, and but what vets need to do is talk to each other, and so the loss of these halls that used to be these things used to be really great for decompression for vets. Because one of the things that a lot of vets have always shared with me is that vets don't like to tell their story because they feel like, one, they're going to get judged and they don't want to get judged. And the other thing is they feel like, no one's going to get this. Like, no one's going to understand this, right? Unless you're a vet. And so going to a VFW or going to a Legion, when you sit down, you talk to another vet, that they're going to get you, right? And it doesn't matter if they didn't fight your war. They could be a Korean vet. They could be a Vietnam vet. They're going to understand the same struggles. What was really cool, what I've learned, and I'm studying PTS, one of the things that a lot of vets through all the generations have always struggled is, like, when you leave the military, you don't get paid every 2 weeks. And a lot of vets struggle with that. They're like, oh, shoot, I don't get a check every 2 weeks. Now, what does that mean for me? And I thought that was kind of like a modern problem. So when I performed in Austin, I was invited to perform for, I did it in Austin, and then this organization found out about me, and they said, we've got a bunch of World War II vets in an old retirement home. Would you do a couple monologues of your play, and we'll come pick you up? And I said, yeah, sure. So it was great. It was awesome. I got to sit down. I performed this 30 minutes of my play, and a cappella and then I sat down and I had lunch with them. And, I just by, we were just sharing stories at the lunch, and he said, it was a Korean vet. And he said, one of the hardest things I had in adjusting was not getting paid every 2 weeks. And I thought, holy crap, that problem has been going on that long. And then the World War II vets stood in, they were like in their 90s, like, yeah, that was hard. I was lost, and one guy said, he drove me to drink because I couldn't, I was confused. And the other guy said, if it wasn't for my wife, I would have been on the streets. And so when vets can talk to each other, they can share these problems together. And what was really cool is all these different vets were sharing the exact same problem, and none of them were part of the same unit or anything. They were the one common, as I say in my play, the one common denominator is the brotherhood they have within each other. So.
Totally. And I love all the references to the storytelling, to all of that. And just listening to you, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. And I love it. Are there other ways? So are there other things that you do giving back? Is this what you do? Can other people help you? Like volunteer to donate time to the play or anything like that? Or?
No, I think the best way, as I tell every vet when I get to ask this question, is if you're on social media, share the play. That's how the play gets booked. And the more the play gets booked, the more I can share the message, and the more I can tell these stories. And the more veterans I can help, heal, and it begins a process to them. I can't tell you how many times I've performed the play, and I'll get an email from a vet saying, your play did this much for me. Your play is here. I'll tell you a story. When I performed in Houston, I got a letter from a retired, I believe, a staff sergeant from. This is where I get lost in my brain. Staff sergeant, Army, right? Yeah. It is that. Can you have a staff sergeant in the Marines? Yeah. He was in the Army. Anyhow, he retired and saw the play and wrote me a letter, and he said that is basically, he said, his wife was she came from a very, very privileged family. She had never had any, basically she was well off. And when they got married together, she never wanted to hear him throughout his whole career. She didn't really respect the military. She didn't want to hear anything about the military. And she didn't really want to hear him talk about the military when they were together. So they saw the play together, and she turned to him in tears and whispered in his ear, and he tells me this in his letter, and it's on my website. He says, I'm very proud of you. And so he wrote me that letter, and he was sharing that with me. And, those messages, and then when that vet sees it, he tells another veteran, and then the other veteran says, hey, look, I just saw something that was unbelievable. And that's really how the play's been traveling for 28 years. I'm going to Texas right now because somebody saw it. I believe it was at the Kennedy Center and connected me to a group in Texas. And that's where I'm at. So if you can share the play on your profiles and, and like me on Facebook and, whenever I post stuff, just stay connected. That's the best thing you can do.
That's fantastic. Well, hey, Doug, really appreciate sharing your story, the journey of American Soldier solo show, the journey home, and just to see a non-veteran with so much passion, practically a veteran based on the stories you probably, all the things you've heard, read, studies, you probably know more than most vets know about what it's like being a vet. So I think I love your passion for it. And again, thank you for what you do and sharing the story of those who've never had their share story or didn't have their story shared. See if I can say that right.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to close with?
No, that's it. Thank you for having me on, and to every vet out there and to their families, thank you for your service and thank you for putting your life on hold for us.
Definitely. Fantastic, and appreciate the time. For everyone, Doug, stay on the line with us for a sec. Everyone else, have a fantastic day. Do not forget, we go live every Tuesday and Thursday evening, starting in May, which is coming up soon. We're actually going to be shifting from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. So the show will now be going next week, starting 6:30 p.m. Eastern, which is 3:30 p.m. Pacific. Just to help one of our co-hosts, Chloe, she's active duty. So, and myself, some of the stuff I do helps us be a little bit more available and not forcing Ed to keep doing the show by himself the last couple times he had. And thanks, Patricia. She loves all the passion. Patricia sounds like she must be a good friend or fan of ours. So connection there. So everyone, thanks, and go subscribe to Helping the Brave and to what Doug's doing. And check out his website as we put in the comments on the screen before. So Doug, hang on, and everyone else have a great night.